In that case, I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's Board of Education meeting for the Cohoes City School District. And I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Giller?
Here.
Mr. Pascal?
Here.
Mr. Jackson?
Here.
Mrs. Dion?
Excuse.
Mrs. Carey?
Here.
Mr. Annaly?
Here.
Mr. Noel?
Here. And I will turn this over to Ms. O'Shea.
Thank you. So, welcome everyone. We wanted to start with a few pictures. So first of all, our Harmony Hill students celebrated Harvest Day on Friday. It was also the end of their character counseling. So they all wore orange to represent fairness. The middle picture, the Cohoes Fire Department visited Van Skyke in recognition of Fire Prevention Month. And at the far right, Carly O'Hara of Real Kids on Real Kids Wear Pink Day with Mr. Galarno, high school English teacher. And this is now celebrated in 11 different states. So as always, if you have questions or comments, submissions can be emailed to boecomment@cohoes.org. So we wanted to give you a few updates. So first, we had our virtual learning day yesterday on Election Day, as our schools are used as polling places, and feedback so far has been positive. Students signed on throughout the day for Zoom lessons and meetings, and this gave everyone, teachers and students, an opportunity to practice in case a class or a building would need to quarantine. So it also enabled us to get more information as to some difficulties that could arise to aid in planning. I have specific connection information that I can share with you in the near future to show you. We have it broken down by grade and by building. We're still finishing compiling that. One thing, although we scheduled our elementary students at different times because some had multiple siblings, there were students that had siblings at the middle and high school, and so they weren't able to connect due to devices. We made sure work was sent home for all students, but this will help us in planning for the future. Any questions on that?
So is this connectivity report, is this internet access at home, device access at home, connectivity within the building, if there's any areas that may not be as strong streaming? And I heard of at least, one experience from a parent who I did tell them to make sure and talk to their principal, but where it was very choppy, and because where the teacher was, there wasn't good connection. So I'm just wondering how comprehensive that report is.
So the initial report is just going to show you connection percentages by class, by building. So we have that. And then the principals are digging down with their teachers. So for example, at Van Skyke, 67% of our students did connect. 5 were not able to because of their siblings. And then there were some intermittent connection difficulties. So the first report is overall, and then we're digging down from there to figure out the different issues. In terms of teacher devices, if the teachers are connecting from their classrooms on desktops, the Zoom platform works better than when connecting through Chromebooks, and there's also occasionally some sound difficulties, so we're looking at all of these. And I know the principals have asked for feedback from staff as well. So we'll be able to give you some more details.
We think you have another practice day?
So what the teachers are now doing, because they're practicing with their students in person next, because now they know the students who had some difficulty. I mean, they practiced before this, happened, and now they're going to follow up in person and practice. We don't have a virtual learning day plan for the near future. I know there was some discussion about virtual snow days. Our difficulty with that is not all of our students have devices, and so in this day, we were able to send work home with all students. So for a virtual snow day,
Can't always plan for a student.
we can't plan, so,
Well, not only that, I mean, we have some teachers with kids in other districts, and I feel like that would be a challenge in and of itself.
Yeah.
To make sure that our teachers could actually be connected too, so.
yeah, so the decision was not made to move to a virtual snow day. I know there was some discussion around it, but the next step is practicing with students and.
That's a great idea.
Just one question on that though, based on our calendar this year, any snow days are coming directly off vacation days right off the rip, or we have a couple built in?
We have 2 snow days built in. So the next is the change of instructional model preference, and principals have been working to accommodate changes. I know we were concerned at first, how would this work out? So far at the elementary level, they're able to accommodate most of the changes. Only 2 students could potentially have to look at going to another building to return to in person. We're contacting those parents, having discussions. But we're able to accommodate most, and middle and high are finding the same thing. So that's good news, and we're working through that. And then just finally, a state ed reporting update. So on November 20th, BEDS data is due to the state, basic educational data. So the principals and I are working on that, already submitted the state data. Also, the digital equity survey is due to the state by December 1st. So this is a building by building report, and principals have to report which students have devices at home, which students have internet access, which students do not by name, but overall numbers, and students that have devices provided by us. So we've given surveys. Our registration process now includes asking parents about their devices, and so the principals are going through that information for the survey, and we can share those results. And then also our consolidated application, Title I, that was due and submitted on August 31st. It was unsubmitted for a few minor changes. We did that and resubmitted the other day. The good news is that means somebody's reviewing it, so we like that because that means somebody's looking at it, and then hopefully after approval, the next step will be receiving some funds.
Can you just remind us our status within Title I, what areas typically those funds go towards?
Yeah, the funds go for staffing of our academic intervention services teachers. All of our elementary and middle school buildings are Title I buildings, not at high school. Okay. Stacy.
So for a business update, we will have an update from the statewide school finance consortium led by Dr. Rick Sims. That's scheduled for November 9th. There'll be an overview of state aid distribution as well as the recent cuts in aid and financial strategies for districts. The next time we meet as a Board of Education on the 18th, we'll have a review of the fund balance and reserves plan. And that leads right into our budget preparation. So the 2021 budget timeline and budget goals will be discussed at our December board meeting. So unfortunately, we do not have any updates on the state aid reductions. I did have the opportunity to speak very briefly with Assemblymember McDonald today, just to confirm that there wasn't really any new news from the state's perspective. So again, New York State is still experiencing financial difficulty. That hasn't changed. The governor is seeking federal relief in the form of stimulus monies. We're not quite sure how much the reductions will be. There has been discussion of 20% across all aid categories. We know that we have already experienced some reductions in the expense-driven aid categories, and I did add a slide, so we'll talk about that on the next slide. But we still don't know what the actual reductions will be, when they'll be made, if there'll be permanent reductions, if there will be any federal stimulus monies, and what that means for New York State, what that means for school districts. So unfortunately, no new news in that front. Next slide, please. So this is a new slide to hopefully get a grasp for what has happened thus far. So the darker green portion of the pie chart represents the actual reductions we've experienced thus far in our expense-driven aids. So we've had reductions in BOCES aid and excess cost aid. And this is actually 1920 revenues. So this is monies that we've had anticipated to receive in the 1920 budget, and we have not received to date. So BOCES is $180,000. Excess cost aid, the net is $114,000 as of today. The state grants. So $90,000 represents what I'm going to call deferred revenue. So we have a large receivable. We haven't received the final payments for our 1920 aids. So we haven't seen the actual reductions, is what we're assuming would be the reduction. So it's called deferred revenue. So we've seen that in summer handicap, in our pre-K grant, as well as future ready. So that's what the $90,000 portion refers to. So just to make this in line with what we would have to do to recoup these monies should we not be made whole, compare it to the actual tax levy. It's 2.4% on this year's tax levy. That's what we would have to raise in order to make up those revenues if we didn't receive that. So it's significant, obviously. Any questions so far?
What about the most recent state aid we were or?
So September was 100% of schedule. In October, we received 126,000 scheduled. We did receive all of that. So September and October, no reductions.
What we anticipated.
Right.
So I have a question on the money withheld from the excess cost aid. Is that impacting, those are our special ed programs primarily, correct?
Correct.
Is that impacting any of those services or students? Have we looked to review programming at all? If this is going to continue down this path where if yes, we've gotten 100% so far, but we still have only gone through 2/4 of the budget. So I'm just wondering if that's something that we've looked at or have on the radar at all. A lot of those things are mandated services, I understand. And I know that we look into BOCES share or piggybacking wherever we can with transportation and all that. But even the grants, the deferred revenue, summer program, we can't do anything about right now.
Right.
We can definitely look to the future for it. But where are we with our pre-K and, how much are we losing within those programs? I know that we did give us a dollar amount for the Future Ready. But does that mean, I know that these are impacted over time, but are these things that we should be looking at now to help our budget moving forward?
So I'll take the
Any questions?
pre-K.
Any questions?
I'll take the pre-K piece. So we did renegotiate the current year pre-K contract to assume a 20% reduction. So yes, we did that. For special ed services, do you want to talk about that part?
So we also did the same with our Future Ready when we planned for the 20% reduction. So for example, something that's happening now are before and after school hours, we've reduced that by 20% of the grant, and we looked throughout. So that's been the case as well.
Does that still meet the requirements of the program?
It does. It does. We're meeting the requirements. What we need to do, we need to request the full amount of budget now for the 20% reduction. If we do get the full amount, then definitely there are things that we will implement to meet the full amount in both categories. So we plan. That's how we plan. In terms of special education, right from the beginning, we knew this would be a difficult budget year. We sit down with Erin Bell, our director of special programs, and Karen Renessi, both in looking in terms of BOCES programs and overall. So we do that in advance and continue to look. Of course, all of a sudden a student will move in or two that we haven't anticipated. That happens often and each year, and then we do have to change things, but we'll continue to look going forward.
So we talked about what has happened thus far. This slide represents possible state aid reductions. So we've been planning for this for the last several months. This is the full 20%. So if we saw an actual 20% reduction in our budgeted state aid, the impact would be $4.8 million on our revenue. So we've been working for several months for a plan on reductions, and thus far we have come up, we're just shy of the full 10%. I'll talk about that later on when we talk about the reductions, the proposed reductions. But 10% has impacted our program offerings, our extracurricular offerings, support services, staffing, facilities, so it's really impacted really every area of the budget. Again, we remain hopeful that we will have an update in New York State by the end of November. Hopeful. Once we receive that update, we'll know then if the 10% reduction plan is enough or if we need to make additional reductions. I also wanted to bring up the CARES restoration funding. So you will recall in the spring, late spring, an item appeared on our state aid runs, and it said pandemic adjustment. And then that was a negative dollar figure, then it was offset by the CARES restoration funding. So the net impact was zero on the state aid run. So we budgeted, this is not new money, this is money that we had budgeted for. We had to apply for those monies in the summer. We did apply for those monies. So then this month we were told that we had to reapply with additional information. And so that's the month of November, and that's due at the end of this month. So just want everyone to be aware of that, because that could be a potential wild card if we don't receive all of that funding.
So can I ask a question about that?
Absolutely.
So what they came back with was the communication with private schools and their share. Do we have any private schools that take share within like Title I %?
We have no private schools that share with Title I. But when we contacted the office, they said that our Title I school consultation collaboration forms were not enough, that we need to go back and have the specific CARES Act collaboration forms completed, which means even if they are not taking monies, we have to have each one completed. So we're working in the process. The difference this time too is there are also some special education schools that we have to contact as well as some specific numbers. So we're working through that process.
I just wondered if we had anybody that was already, the line that we were providing funds to.
Oh, great. So the reductions plan, there's some minor changes to the plan, but for the most part, it's the same as it was the last time we met. So reductions plan, the 10% plan, again, we had received, our bill for TRS was less than we had anticipated, so we had savings in TRS. District-wide spending freeze was implemented over the summer. The only exception is health and safety. We did have some savings in BOCES services, including the distance learning program, records management, arts and ed, and some specialized services. We did renegotiate or actually terminate some contracts. So we renegotiated the prepaid contract, which we had already talked about. And then we terminated our reading and printing contract as well as our ARC transitions contract. And then we did have staffing concessions for individual contract holders for mileage and vacation buyback. For program reductions, the recommendation is our AIM Academy, which is here at the high school. Clubs, there would be no offered clubs with the exception of the National Honor Society at the high school, the Junior National Honor Society at the middle school. And then we continue our discussions exploring reduced or no cost options for athletics. We don't have an update yet on the timing for the winter sports, if that's going to be January. But we suspect we'll have some news on that within the week.
Mr. Hino has our athletic director meeting tomorrow, and then we'll be meeting with him.
We have several staffing reductions through attrition. There's 9 full-time equivalents, 1 reading teacher at the middle school, 1 special education teacher at the middle school, 2 custodians, 1 at Harmony Hill, that was a resignation and then retirement at our high school, 2 cleaners, Abram Lansing, resignation and a retirement at the high school. We had 1 retirement at central office. We had 1 retirement of a 10-month secretary, and we have 1 resignation of a 12-month secretary. We have, as part of the reductions plan, staffing reduced from full-time to part-time. We have a 0.5 science teacher at the high school AIM Academy, 0.6 math teacher associated with the AIM Academy, and a 0.6 ELA teacher associated with the AIM Academy. We have a 0.8 music, which is district-wide. This is a change of 0.3 library media specialist after looking at the regulations and the schedule for the high school and middle school. This was changed from a 0.5 to a 0.3. We have 0.4 registrar, and then part-time security would no longer be offered at the elementary level. If it was needed, they would coordinate with high school, middle school coverage. Positions that were fully eliminated, it's a total of 5 full-time equivalents. 1.0 social studies teacher, this is the AIM Academy. 1.0 guidance, and that's 0.6 at the middle school and 0.4 at the high school. 2 teacher assistants, 1 at the middle school, 1 at the high school, and 1 special education teacher at the high school. So with the minor adjustments and staffing reductions, the proposed reductions total $2,053,000. We do remain $347,000 short of our $2.4 million goal for the 10%. We are taking action tonight, tonight's meeting for the reductions plan. For next steps, we continue to meet with our union leadership, and actually we have a meeting scheduled with CPA next week and CTA the week of November 16th. So we'll continue those meetings. And then potentially the budget committee will meet post New York State update to identify if they need to come up with a further reduction plan based on the state's update. The extracurriculars represent 16.9% of the total reductions, and equates to about $346,000. Materials and supplies, equipment, etc., represent 16.7 or $342,000. Contract terminations and renegotiations represent 13.2%, which is about $270,000. The TRS savings is $173,000 or 8.4%. BOCE savings is 6.4% or $131,000, and our staffing reductions are 38.5% or $790,000. So that number changed since the last time we had that.
So if, before we open it up for discussion, I just want to go back to the staffing and discuss that a little bit more. As you know, these have been very difficult decisions. We're continuing to work with our principals, our director of special programs, to minimize the impact as best we can. So, for example, Laura Tarlo, our high school principal, and her team, they're looking student by student of each of the students in the AIM Academy, looking at how to schedule those students, scheduling one of the teachers who was in the AIM Academy to have a quiet study so the students can touch base. We're doing the same thing with other students who might be impacted, so really a team approach to look. And I also wanted to mention cleaners, because I know Stacy had talked about retirements and resignations. We understand that cleaning and sanitizing our buildings are always important and even more crucial now in the time of COVID. We do have a plan to begin to fill these positions, and it's a model we followed in the past where we do start with substitute cleaners, and then eventually the substitute cleaners do become our permanent cleaners, depending on outcome. So we do have a plan to address that, because I know that's also been a question, and having clean and disinfected buildings is so we understand.
Are substitute cleaners part-time, just as needed basis, or do they follow some sort of a schedule?
The only one that really follows a schedule is the one that covers Page Avenue. They are part-time, yes. We were actually really short on substitutes, so we had started looking for substitutes before we received the resignation for retirement or otherwise. So it's usually we have a bank of substitutes, and we kind of know who's able to handle the run, and kind of a historical trend as far as attendance and reporting in a timely manner. So that's something that we don't have right now, because we haven't had a real bank of substitutes. So we're hiring 2 substitutes. I think one is on tonight's agenda. So the plan is going to be to have that report to the buildings. We're going to modify some of the runs at the high school. We're able to do so under COVID because we don't have the night activities that we normally would have. So we're able to make some adjustments in the runs. So that's a little bit of efficiencies that we'll realize through that, and we're only able to do that because of the COVID environment. But the plan is going to be to hire several subs, to try the subs out, see how they do, see how they manage the task, and then eventually they would be.
So one of the considerations I was thinking is, if there is a particular sub-list for the high school or Harmony Health, where, we're in a position right now where we have to know who's in our buildings, we're trying to limit the contact of who's here, familiarity of spaces. I didn't know if we ran off the list that was per building, or if it's just one big list and where we go wherever we need it.
So usually it's one list, but we do try to have one sub start at a building and stay there to know the routine. So yes, that's what we try to do. It is one list, but that's exactly what we try to do. Yep.
So can I just reiterate what Ms. O'Shea said, that the reduction in recommendations are devastating. And they were not arrived at lightly. But in particular, I just want to thank Ms. Carla at the high school. She's getting hit the hardest in terms of reduction. I appreciate her looking out for the in-academy kids, and always, no matter the set of circumstances we can her, doing the right thing for kids.
One other comment, we will be communicating this district-wide tomorrow for budget discussions, and then Laura, working with Erin, also has communication specifically for high school, the high school community, and then the individual buildings will then have communication based on whatever classes are impacted. So we do have a communication as well.
Were there any other, that's the end of the presentation portion, is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from people on the board related to the agenda or anything in the presentation?
Stacey, I'm just wondering if you can touch on the contracts that we're talking about, approving tonight, the consortium contracts.
So that's giving approval to participate in the bidding process. We are through OC and Lucy's, our natural gas and our electric. So this is granting permission for us to participate in the bidding process.
This is something we participated with in the past.
Absolutely, for over a decade. Yeah,
Okay.
we have seen lots of money and savings through this process.
That's good news. It's sold. I just wanted to make sure, we've gotten into contracts with, about our energy savings before, and I just wanted to be clear that these are not those contracts. This is something that we have been involved in.
Absolutely, and it's a purchasing power because we couple with larger districts, multiple districts through the.
Are they all local districts?
They're actually some of them are local, some of them are neighboring districts and other both states. It's been a great purchasing vehicle for us, and we've seen lots of money and savings through this process.
Good, I appreciate that.
So they're actually, the next time we meet, we will have a contract. We have to have our boiler, the Harmony Hill boilers have to be the startup process, so that's outside of the initial contract that we had with TMI. That would be paid for out of the capital reserve monies, but it is a requirement. They have to be started up, they have to be tested. So you will see that, but that's not out of general fund.
So not real expenses, it's something that we were
out of the capital
anticipating.
reserve. Yes. You will see that the next time we meet.
I did just want to take a moment to reiterate what was already discussed and to thank everyone, all the staff members that were impacted by the reductions, to thank them for their, continued work. Those that are still here in the district, thank you for, maintaining, and I know it's a fairly difficult situation. So it's not something that central office, the board, or anyone in the district wanted to do. It is the financial situation and reality that we're in that kind of led us here. It's not, I said it last meeting, but it's not a reflection on the work that you've done or anything in the district. We're very thankful for all of the efforts that you all do and those that you continue to do. So thank you for that. And then for those that are involved with the layoffs, thank you for all the time that you've put towards students and students of Cohoes and all of our staff and making this a better place than it was before. So we'll sorely miss you and your work here. With that, I could use a motion from the board for tonight's consent agenda.
Make a motion.
Second,
Mrs. Giller,
Yes.
Mr. Pascal,
yes.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mrs. Carey,
Yes.
Mr. Annaly,
Yes.
and Mr. Nolan.
Yes. Were there any other comments or questions from board members? Anything unrelated to the agenda, any topic at all?
So I just wanted to mention, I've heard some really positive things about Parent Square, people that are using it. And I am glad that it's something that we decided to go through. I'm wondering, what our connectivity with our families are at this point, success rate. If this is like, if people are starting to get used to using it, and like, are the majority of our families participating in the communications? Because I think it's really important for us to continue, this ongoing discussion and sending things out and making sure families feel connected to the decision-making process and what's going on here. I'm just wondering if that is our only line. I know that we have the website, we've got Facebook, all of those things, but as far as teacher communications and stuff, are families accessing the application and using it?
So we also have Schoology. We can run some analytics and share in terms of Parent Square. From the informal feedback I get, the majority are.
Nothing like huge project-based, like, okay, we've got a handful of families not using it. It's not, I'm just would like an idea of.
Yeah. And one of the things that's why it's crucial is a parent changes their email address, etc. That it's crucial that the information gets shared with the buildings, because that's part of making sure it's updated. And I know that Aaron and both Aaron and Sylvie work with this as well, so we can get some information. And I think we've had discussions about making sure we put out there regularly. If you haven't, downloaded the app, etc. And then it is something that's brought up at registration as well. It definitely can be analytics.
Again, not a lot of work.
I think it's, I can see right now they'll send messages and say percent of messages received, etc.
Yeah.
So.
And then I guess my only other question is, we had talked a while back about virtual models, schools with all virtual models, and I didn't know there was, we had a transition. I didn't know if there was any follow up on that, and it just comes to mind because we had that virtual test day. And if it does inevitably happen where, we will end up having to close a school, just wondering if we could put some feelers out to see what that looks like, and if we're ready. I know that you guys are preparing, and that test day is one that's going to help us get the technology and the connectivity. Student engagement, of course, is something that we work on every day, But if there are districts out there who are doing this every day and have been doing it since the beginning of the year, you know, are there best practices that we can share? And that I'm just thinking futuristically, if, you know, if something were, then, you know, we have something in place, or at least have had a conversation about the do's and don'ts, maybe, to be more prepared.
Yeah, we definitely can have those conversations. Some of those districts are one-to-one. And so that makes a difference in your model, with it being one-to-one. And one-to-one, all of the, you know, bring out devices so that every child has been using that device and that's their device. So I've had some conversations, but definitely we continue to explore. And I can tell you too, so for example, we're hearing our elementary Chromebooks. We have it in writing, but
I'll give the face like waiting.
they have it in writing and they're coming in December, but you know, so it could look different after a certain point of time too, as we gain more Chromebooks, et cetera. But definitely, and this is part of the preparedness and also looking at scheduling. So during this virtual day, we had our middle and high students connect period by period by period. Our elementary, it was an hour by grade and then some 30-minute meets. And so that definitely showed us that without each child in the family having a device, it's problematic and it limits some of the models we can follow. So definitely all that to be taken into consideration. And it's on our administrative agenda this about preparing.
Yeah, I mean, the tough thing is, even if we had all the money in the world, we can't get them, you know.
Yeah, I
The
know.
accessibility right now of actually getting a Chromebook in your hand is just a challenge.
Right. So the good news about yesterday though was even some of our youngest students, teachers anecdotally reported that they were very happy that they were able to join on, follow on their own. Teachers have Google Classrooms set up. I do know our primary teachers are asking if we can explore a different K12 platform. So Seesaw, so we can have some discussions about that as well. So we're looking at things like that too, what we get best.
I know another topic that we've been discussing, and for folks viewing from home, you can tell the format's a little bit different inside the room, but we are continuously kind of evaluating how we run meetings and trying to figure out a safe way and the most, you know, beneficial way for us to run these meetings, whether that's, you know, involving some sort of way where we have some in person or not, but we're continuously trying to make these better and trying to figure out what's you know, going to make this work well as we continue to move forward in this, you know, COVID scenario, which isn't immediately going away. And, you know, in fact, we're trending poorly at the moment. So we were kind of evaluating in person, and we're continuing to do that about inviting the public into these meetings. But for this meeting in particular, we decided that this wasn't the right time, but we are trying to take as much as we can to improve the format. And so in this case, we can actually see each other and talk to each other. And that's a big improvement from our perspective. And we'll continue to try to iterate on this as we move forward. We do, if there are no other questions from or comments from board members, we do have a question from the general public that I'll get to. Okay, great. The question was from Marianne Gendron, which is, I'm not sure if this has been discussed or will be discussed, but I'd like to make a plea to not remove the possibility of snow days from our children. I know that other districts have made the decision to do away from them, and I beg our school board to not follow suit in a year that they have had so much taken from them. Let them hold on to this small piece of their childhood. Just because we have the technology does not mean we should use it. And that's the comment from Marianne Gendron. And I do not believe, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, we have 3 scheduled snow days for the year. And the only circumstance we would be looking to use or not use them in is if we find ourselves quickly running out of them, or if there's some other unforeseen circumstance where, we have to meet a certain number of school days for the students for the year. But we do have these 3 scheduled snow days that we have had every year. Is that correct?
I believe it's two this year.
Okay,
It's 2 scheduled snow days.
thank you. But aside from those 2 scheduled snow days, if we go past that, then we'll have to look at, whether a virtual model at home would work well. But I don't think our goal is to get rid of those 2 days immediately without any, to get rid of them entirely.
Not at this time, no. And then, especially because right now our devices, we don't have the devices right now. We won't until a bit later. So the plan is to continue with the 2 snow days. If there's snow.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like we're gonna get rid of it, so.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. If there are no other comments or questions from board members, then that'll wrap up tonight's meeting. And our next meeting is November 18th at 6 o'clock, and it'll be live streamed again. If there are any changes or we're able to invite the public at all, we will make sure you're aware, and we'll post on the website or send out any notices as appropriate. And with that,
Can I just really quick, I just wanted to say congratulations to Mr. Roylands for his retirement that we accepted tonight. He's a cleaner, and we just appreciate his service for the district.
thank you. I always appreciate it when people bring up things I miss. That's why we're a team, right? That's how that works.
Great.
In that case, then, thank you for your service, and I will need a motion to adjourn at 6:50.
I'll do that. I've done nothing else.
Okay, Mrs. Giller,
Yes.
Mr. Pascal,
Yes.
Mr. Jackson,
Yes.
Mrs. Carey,
Yes.
Mr. Annaly,
Yes.
and Mr. Nolan.
Yes. Thank you again, everyone, and have a good evening.